Hi, everybody. Rob Leslie is my name. I'm the founder and the CEO of Sedicii, and today I'm going to introduce you to PREXA, which is our new AML transaction monitoring service that works collaboratively, meaning all the banks participating in a network can mutually work together to identify illicit money flows. Before we start, let me talk a little bit about the company. What Sedicii does is we provide real-time verified digital identity solutions to our customers. That provides transaction certainty for both the data and the customer information that we process. And ultimately, it's all about delivering value to those customers. The company is approximately 7 years old. We have 15 staff working across 4 countries: Ireland, the UK, in Belgium, and also in Spain. And we've got a very strong executive team with skill sets covering business and operations. My background is cybersecurity and compliance. We have experts in selling and digital identity. Our CTO, Miguel, is a PhD in cryptography, and he's the brains behind most of our products. And Peter has come from the financial services industry, where he ran one of the largest credit unions here in Ireland. Illicit money flows, as we all know, are a huge problem. 1 to 2 trillion of global GDP is laundered every year around the world. It's growing at a huge rate, and it affects businesses and people individually. It causes huge social and commercial damage. Some of the reasons for this are because banks cannot share information that they hold, and the overall system is not designed for speed, which ultimately plays into the crooks' hands. We want to change this. Today, approximately 1% of all laundered funds are identified, and most of it is after the fact. We need to make sure it happens before the transaction completes in order to make sure that the funds aren't misappropriated and can be stopped leaving the account of the person who legitimately owns them. False positives are too big. We identify the wrong things. Notification is too slow, meaning the information getting to law enforcement and law enforcement reacting to it is way, way too slow. And there is little interbank collaboration. We need banks to work together in a much more effective way in order to put a stop to this. We've developed PREXA, which is a way for banks to share insight legally between them by both of them looking at their customer data and assessing risk that a transaction is illicit. This can happen using the technology we've created where neither bank ever exposes any raw customer data. So we're able to intelligently identify the behaviors, traits, and characteristics of both the sender and the receiver, confidentially compute a risk score that the transaction being processed between both of them is either real or not, and generate an alert. We look at transaction activity, we look at the client attribute profile, the static KYC record, and the login activity and history associated with both accounts in order to generate an algorithm that can identify whether something is problematic or not. The technology we use to do this is called secure multi-party computation, which enables 2 or more parties to jointly compute a risk score without any of the parties involved ever exposing any of the inputs they contribute. So privacy and confidentiality is fully preserved at all times. The system we've developed will run in standalone mode so that we can run against data that a bank holds in order to try and identify anomalies. The anomalies then can be converted into new algorithms that will run pre-execution mode in order to stop a transaction should that anomaly appear again. This means the money is stopped from leaving the bank before it becomes problematic. We think that we'll be able to identify a far greater number of false negatives, meaning transactions today that are completing that ultimately shouldn't be completing, because we're able to identify these anomalies and ultimately generate this real-time collaborative ecosystem where banks will be able to work together to process these transactions. Here is a representation of how 2 banks could work together by creating algorithms that allow the processing data within both the sending bank and the recipient bank, looking at things like entity resolution. What this does for the bank ultimately means that no personal confidential data is ever shared, and the customer's privacy is fully preserved. The fraudulent payment is stopped before execution, and we reduce false positives, increasing true positives and reducing false negatives. This reduces the risk of fines and increases your compliance with the regulatory regime in whatever country you're working. We can use this to identify any fraud or anti-money laundering or money laundering pattern across a variety of different sources. It means better governance, and it means making sure that the actors are honest. We have this currently underway and working with a number of financial institutions to demonstrate how this can work, and have won awards from some of the organizations that you can see here. We would love to try this and show this to SWIFT, how it can be deployed within the SWIFT network, and how SWIFT itself can make a difference when it comes to the identification of money laundering activity within their network. As I said, my name is Rob Leslie. My colleague David Cunningham, our Chief Commercial Officer, is available to take questions, and we look forward to hopefully working with SWIFT in the future in a collaborative way to bring this technology to the participants within the SWIFT network. Thank you for your attention.